The tale of Obinna and Nneka, the hidden asset. In a bustling town in southeastern Nigeria, an Igbo man named Obinna lived with his wife, Nneka, and their 2 young children. Obinna was a dedicated man who worked hard to provide for his family. He held a steady job in the local government office, and though his salary wasn't enormous, he made sure it covered all the family's expenses. Nneka, on the other hand, was unemployed. She stayed home, taking care of the children and managing the household. Though she wasn't earning money, Obinna respected her role in the family and trusted her completely with all their finances. Every month, when Obinna received his salary, he handed it over to Nneka, trusting her to handle the family's expenses, rent, school fees, food, and everything else they needed. For years, this was the arrangement, and it worked well for them. After 2 years of living in their modest rented apartment, the couple decided it was time to move to a more spacious home. Their children were growing, and they needed more room. Obinna and Nneka found a new house in a nicer neighborhood, and after discussing the move, Obinna agreed to continue paying the rent, as he always had. They moved into the house, and Obinna continued to give Nneka his entire salary to cover their living expenses. He trusted her completely, believing that she was using the money responsibly for the good of their family. What Obinna didn't know was that the house they had moved into wasn't actually a rented house. Nneka had secretly purchased the house in her name using the savings from the money Obinna had been giving her. Instead of telling him the truth, Nneka let Obinna believe that they were still paying rent. Every month, she would collect his salary, pretending to pay the rent to a landlord, while in reality, she was the sole owner of the house. Life went on smoothly for the family until one fateful year when Obinna suddenly lost his job. The government office where he worked was downsizing, and he was among those laid off. With no steady income, Obinna began to feel the pressure of providing for his family. He was desperate to find another job, but the opportunities were few and far between. Despite his struggles, Obinna refused to let his family suffer. Even though he had no income, he was determined to continue paying the rent for their home. He began borrowing money from friends and family, scraping together whatever he could to make sure they didn't fall behind on payments. Nneka watched as her husband suffered, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. She couldn't find the courage to admit that the house they were living in was actually theirs, and that she had been hiding this from him for years. After months of financial hardship, Obinna grew more desperate. One day, he approached a family friend, Chidi, to ask for another loan to help pay the rent. But Chidi, who knew about the true ownership of the house, looked at Obinna with confusion. "Obinna, why are you borrowing money to pay rent?" Chidi asked. "Isn't the house your wife's? She bought it years ago." Obinna was stunned. "What do you mean, Nneka bought the house?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief. Chidi, realizing that Obinna didn't know the truth, explained everything. Nneka had purchased the house with the money Obinna had been giving her, and she had been the owner all along. Obinna, unaware, had continued to borrow money to pay what he thought was rent for a house that was already theirs. The news hit Obinna like a thunderbolt. He couldn't believe that Nneka had kept such a huge secret from him. He felt betrayed and hurt, not just because of the deception, but because Nneka had let him suffer while she sat on the truth. That evening, Obinna confronted Nneka. He was angry, his voice shaking as he demanded to know why she had hidden the truth from him for so long. "I've been borrowing money, struggling to provide for this family, and you let me believe we were paying rent. How could you do this, Nneka?" Nneka, filled with guilt and shame, explained her actions. "I didn't want to upset you, Obinna," she said quietly. "When I bought the house, I thought I was securing our future. I wanted to make sure we had something solid, something that belonged to us. I didn't know how to tell you, and as time passed, it became harder and harder to confess." Obinna was silent for a long time, his heart torn between anger and confusion. But as he looked at his wife, he saw the woman he had married, the mother of his children, and the one who had managed their household for years. Though he was hurt, he realized that Nneka had not acted out of malice, but out of a misguided attempt to protect their future. "What about our children?" Obinna finally said. "What about the life we've built together? We can't tear it apart over this." Nneka, with tears in her eyes, nodded. "I'm so sorry, Obinna. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to make sure we had a home, something for our children's future." Obinna took a deep breath. Despite his hurt, he couldn't let this break their family apart. After much reflection, he decided to forgive Nneka, not only for the sake of their children but also because he recognized that, in the end, the house was an asset that had secured their future, even if it had come with deception. Though their relationship was shaken, Obinna and Nneka worked to rebuild the trust between them. Nneka promised never to keep such secrets again, and Obinna, while still wounded, chose to focus on the love they shared and the future they could build together. He realized that the house, despite the painful way he had learned about it, was now a foundation for their family's future. Obinna found another job, and though it took time to recover from the financial strain, they worked together to raise their children in a loving home. The experience taught them both the importance of honesty, trust, and communication in their marriage. The story of Obinna and Nneka became a tale shared in their community, a story not just of betrayal, but of forgiveness and the strength of family bonds. Though the path was not easy, they learned that love and trust could be rebuilt, and that the family they had worked so hard to protect was worth every sacrifice. In the end, Obinna realized that while Nneka had acted on her own, her actions had ultimately secured a future for their children. And as they moved forward, they did so with a deeper understanding of the importance of partnership in marriage, where transparency and trust are the true foundations of any home. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thanks.